Hey, what is up guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we'll be reviewing one of my most favorite cameras to do video content, which is the Canon EOS M6 Mark II. So the Canon EOS M6 Mark II is actually a 32.5 megapixel mirrorless camera that shoots at 720p video at around 60 frames per second, 1080p videos at around 24, 30, also 60 frames per second with the addition of an extra slow-mo, which is actually 122 frames per second, given that you have to sacrifice your autofocus, and also shoots at 4K at 24 and 30 and lastly 60 frames per second. Now with this camera, it also has a unique flip screen for vloggers who actually needs the screen so they can see what they're recording and how they're recording, whether or not if they're in focus. Now this camera is actually also an APS-C type camera. It has an APS-C sensor inside of it. Therefore, since it's APS-C, it actually gives a 1.6 times crop factor. It's actually pretty much okay because you do have lenses that will widen it up as well. Now, it also has its own set of lenses, which is actually the EFM lenses. There are quite a few which are actually pretty good for video content creation as well. So the M6 Mark II actually has a very good grip on its side. It also has an HDMI port, also a USB-C port, and a microphone out. The only thing it doesn't have though is an earphone out port. It also has a flip-up flash. It also has a horseshoe mount here, as you can see, whether you want to put an extra flash there or an extra light, or also a mic for actual video content creators. Now the EOS M6 Mark II also has a flip screen, which is actually very useful for content creators, so that they can see if their actual face is on focus. So you never know when you're trying to do these types of video contents and then later on just finding out that you're actually out of focus. So that's really bad. So the M6 Mark II also has two additional dials. So you have your shutter speed here, you also have your aperture here. But the thing is with this aperture dial is that it also has a dual function, which means if you press this, that aperture dial can actually turn into either a white balance or an ISO dial. So basically kind of like giving you a 3-part dial here as well. You can actually go with 4 if you count the white balance and the ISO being 2 separate things. Now, what are the reasons why I actually love this camera? So just letting you know right now, I am actually using one of the EF lenses, which is the 11 to 22 millimeter wide angle lens, which is actually very good for video content creation, of course, for vlogging especially. Now, what do I like about this camera? The things that I love about this is first and foremost is that it actually records 4K uncropped. Hey, what is up guys? Just doing a test video. So right now I'm shooting at the 11 to 22 millimeter f 4.5 wide angle lens. So this is your 4K 24 frames per second here in the Canon M6 Mark II. So as you can see, it's actually not cropped. Well, it is a bit because you still have that APS-C sensor. Now compared to the Canon EOS M50, now my problem with EOS M50 is not only is that it's an APS-C mirrorless type camera, but with the 4K present on the Canon EOS M50, the problem that I have there is it further crops what you already have cropped because of the 1.6. So you already have your mirrorless crop of 1.6, but then when you turn into the Canon EOS M50 for the 4K video, it will further crop your video. So what you see right now is actually the APS-C crop and now the M50 crop. So that tantamounts to a whole lot of cropping, and that actually doesn't work with me. Now what I like about this as well is that it also uses a UHD Type 2 memory card for the camera. Now the thing is with UHD Type 2 memory cards is that it's actually faster for it to process any pictures or large video file formats while you're doing your video vlogs on the go. So it's easier for you to actually do your records, do your pictures, do your shots without even having to wait that long of a time just for it to get it stored on the memory card. Oh, one more reason that I forgot to tell you, one of the reasons why I actually chose this camera against the M50 is that on the M50 it's actually limited to only for dual pixel autofocus, so you don't have that eye autofocus that actually is really good as well when you're doing, especially when you're doing your video content creations where you're doing talking headshots. No, you don't want that on your video trying to look for you in the shot, trying to focus and defocus, so that's pretty distracting as well when you're making videos. So I actually prefer my 4K to actually have the eye autofocus as well, which is actually one of the reasons why I got this. Now, a few more things, and I keep on saying this, one of the reasons that I love this as well, that I actually love on Canon cameras, is that its menu system is very easy and very intuitive. It's actually easy to navigate, especially if you're a beginner. And one more thing that I love about this is also, again, I keep on saying this, is actually the flip screen. Because, you know, we need this flip screen when we're doing talking headshots. It's hard to try and focus when you're actually not in focus, right? If you're trying to do this solo video vlogging or video content creation, you know, you'd rather have a flip screen where you can actually see and observe yourself while you're doing it, you know, just making sure that everything's in focus. Now, one more thing that I love about this is also that the LCD is also a touchscreen. It's actually very easy to just try and navigate through here, through the touchscreen, and not fiddle around with the physical buttons on the back. Now, also what I love about this is because I'm actually coming from the Canon EOS M3, I found that these buttons right here, these on and off switches, these toggles actually, are very, very easy and convenient to use, whereas the Canon EOS M3 has this on and off button hiding around here on the top. I mean, it's actually not that bad, but I prefer the toggles. And lastly, one of the things that I love about this camera is that it shoots at 120 frames per second at 1080p, which is actually very useful at some point. Now, I've already talked about all the pros, all of my likes about this camera. Now, what are my dislikes? First and foremost, guys, it's very important for you to know that unfortunately there's rumors that Canon is actually discontinuing the EOS M lines, so that includes M lenses as well, which is actually quite bummer because as mirrorless cameras, they're pretty lightweight. Oh, one more thing that I like about is that it's very lightweight. And for me, I'd rather use this than to carry around a very heavy rig, a very heavy camera, especially when you're doing your video content creation and vlogging. You'd rather have or carry a very lightweight camera with very lightweight lenses as well. Now, the good thing about this though is that even though that this one's discontinued, the lens have been discontinued, is you still have an EF mount. Now with the EF mount, it actually acts as an adapter for EOS M cameras because it not only supports EF lenses, but it also furthers your use of your present camera, which is actually pretty good. So with this mount adapter, you just get your EF lens. I actually have the nifty 50 EF lens adapter. You just attach it like so, and there you go. You have an EF lens that you can actually attach to your EOS camera. So see, you can actually use an EF lens from your old camera lenses to your new vlogging camera. Okay, another thing that I don't love about this camera is well, basically it's the APS-C crop sensor. So, you know, you already have, you can't actually do a full frame shot at this. You're gonna have to sacrifice around 1.6 times the crop factor of the image as well. So unfortunately, well, honestly, for me, it's not an unfortunate thing because if you do have the proper lenses to cover it, then you're pretty much okay with it. Plus, they do have an attachment, an adapter, which I currently don't have, which is actually the Viltrox Speed Booster, which actually cancels out that crop factor and makes it a regular full frame size video. And lastly guys, one of the things that I don't actually like about this camera is, like other people, is actually the same thing, also the flip up screen. Why do you ask? Because first off, when you flip up the screen, you can't use your horseshoe mount for anything at all. So if you're planning to use this, you're gonna have to put this down. See? Because if you try to attach something here, your screen will go just up until this. And one more thing that I do not like about, again, with the flip screen, is that your flip screen, the LCD screen that you see here, would only fix itself at this angle, okay? At this specific angle, when it's fully flipped up forward. Now, if you tend to flip your screen back a bit, you can see that your image would actually be inverted if you flip it back. So not until you flip it all the way forward would your screen actually fix itself. But okay, so going back to this flip up screen versus the horseshoe mount. Now, I find that problem quite alright, to be quite honest, because I have with me, I actually purchased a small rig horseshoe mount relocating set, where I can just actually, instead of using this, I have another horseshoe mount here or here that I can actually use for my mic setup or for my light setup anywhere here, and without sacrificing the flip screen being up. So I can have the flip screen being up here plus the horseshoe mount holding my mic as well. So it's actually not a biggie for me, to be quite honest. And one more thing, one of the things that I don't like about this as well is the 120 frames per second. Why, so you ask? Basically, if you use the 120 frames per second slow motion, you'd sacrifice not only digital image stabilization, which actually this camera has, but you also sacrifice your autofocus. Now, that's not much of a big problem for people who actually doing the manual thing here in the cameras, when you actually do manual focus more than autofocus, because you can actually just do your focus while you're doing your shot. But if you're doing autofocus, I'm afraid you actually can't use the 120 frames per second. You're gonna have to get used to having a still subject, you know, a subject that doesn't move, or you're gonna have to get used to using your dials for manual focusing. So there you go. Okay guys, thank you very much for tuning in. That's it for the video. If you like this video, click that like button, subscribe, and also hit that bell icon for any more future notifications. Until then, I'll see you guys in the next bit.